Folks, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show, and so great to bring back a friend of the program, a guy who dropped some serious knowledge in round one, and felt we could do it again. Reggie Mcbride, welcome back to the Jake Feinberg Show.
Thank you, Jake.
Reggie, how do you think it works? As you've moved along, you're in this century, you've been as busy or as in demand as ever as a bass player. It's just, Herbie found you, or Herbie came calling, and other cats came calling. I mean, how does it work in the business? Like in your career, I mean, how quickly were you considered a household name as far as a first call studio bassist, or because you were just sort of dwelling in the studio with Stevie for a while, Cyrita, Manny, did you kind of fly below the radar a little bit?
Yeah, I think at that time, if you played on hits, your name became hot. You were the guy. The go-to guy or the new guy, for what it's worth. It's like, even I understood that record labels even put your name on a list of people to call for sessions. And if they needed some, there were several things or items like that were developed, like there was an answering service called Your Girl. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Whoa. I do. I know about Radio Registry in New York. What is this one?
Your Girl was like a dispatch. And you just called in to them and say, my name is Reggie Mcbride. And it had a live lady or man to answer the phone. And they were hooked up with every recording studio. And I don't know, what else. But they had it so that you could call in, and if anybody needed a bass player, all they needed to do was call this number. Or if they needed an orchestra, they would call this number. And it was like a dispatch. So Your Girl would call you and check your availability for, we want to know if you're available from 10 to 1, and then 2 to 6, that was the hours. And then 6 to midnight, or they called it golden time.
This was in L.A.?
This was in L.A., yeah.
Wow.
Not many people knew about it.
I mean, dude, when would you say, when did this start? Was this in the 80s? Nobody, and I've interviewed, all the I don't care, Dean Parks or Leland Sklar, all these guys. I've never heard of that service.
Yeah, I'm sure they would know about it. At least I think so.
Wow.
And if you were, you just needed to call and check in and say, is there any work for me today? And it was like a dispatch, and they say, yeah, it's be it Larrabee or be it RCA at 10. You got a 10 to 1, and then you have a 2 to 6 at RCA, or you have a 1 at in the evening with producer, and they would say his name, and they would say, well, this session is from 6 to midnight. So this is the call, and all you had to do was show up. You'd have your cartage. They would call your cartage, as a matter of fact, if you got that busy, and make sure that your cartage was on time and your gear met you at the studio.
You would say that this was in the 70s, the 80s, or even closer to, when was this?
I didn't know exactly when it started, but I found out about it in the 70s. And I'd say about 76, 77.
I'm curious about, like, were you in a situation with Stevie that, not just because of the work, but were you like, did you have to turn down a lot of studio gigs because you were just working with him and you were in the studio for months at a time?
Yeah. I was really busy with him. And then what happened was I left the group, and, he had us on retainer. And so I ended up leaving the group because I got a better offer with Rare Earth.
You got a better offer?
Well, it was. I got an offer to go with Rare Earth and be a part of the band and be a part of the corporation and be a part of the band, a member of the band.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about their history in the sense of, it's funny, I see their records. I mean, they're from Detroit. They actually made the pilgrimage out to L.A. along with Berry Gordy. I mean, it's very well documented, like the Funk Brothers were pretty much left high and dry, when Barry moved out there, and a lot of those guys had to go out there anyway and sort of make it up on the fly. But where did Rare Earth come? I mean, they formed originally as the Sunliners. Were you hip to them in Detroit? Just take me through the idea of their trek from Detroit to L.A.
Well, from what I understood, I didn't find out about the Sunliners until later on. And I got the call. I was working with Etta James.
Wow.
And we were playing live at the Troubadour, and Richard Perry would come and sit in the front and right in front of me.
Oh my dear God.
And he would watch me every single day.
I just want to be clear. You left Stevie to join Etta and play live with her, or how did that work?
Well, I was working with Stevie and Etta at the same time. They
were playing together.
No, they weren't playing together. It's just that whenever I had days off with Stevie, I would play with.
That's insane, man. That's.
I know.
So you were just playing. Your calendar was pretty full, and so you were gigging, and Etta was playing the Troubadour. Who was in that rhythm set? Who was on drums?
Greg Thomas was on drums.
Oh my God, that dude is a bad drummer. I know that cat. I think he's passed away. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
So Richard Perry would just stare at you in the front row every night.
Yeah, and somebody walked up to me one night, and I think it was his secretary, Carol Pinkers. And she said to me, Richard's going to be in touch with you. That's all she said, or something to that nature.
Right.
I said, "Who's Richard?" And she said, "Richard Perry." I said, "Well, that name sounds important," which it was. Yeah, he was producing everybody.
Everybody did.
He came to, and I'll tell you what was Trevor Lawrence was involved.
Oh my! I can't believe you just dropped his name, man. That I did a great interview with that cat. What a great cat.
Yeah.
Was he? So he was.
I knew him from the Stevie Wonder records.
Right.
And he, I guess he was one that kind of engineered me to be with Etta because. He explained to Stevie, which I'm sure he did, that Etta needs a bass player, so if you don't mind, we'd like to use Reggie whenever you're not busy, put it to him like that. And I think that Stevie didn't mind me going and playing with Etta. So in the meanwhile, I was playing. We were playing weekly, I think, at the Troubadour. Great band. I said great Thomas, William Smith, Smitty.
Oh, Smitty, are you? That's the greasiest band I've ever heard of in my life, dude.
Oh yeah, and Buzzy Featon on guitar.
Oh my dear. Have you talked to Buzz lately?
Not lately, no.
Because he's battling cancer right now.
Yeah. That's what I understood.
Dude, Buzzy Featon, Greg Thomas, Smitty, Mcbride, Etta.
And Bobby Keys and Trevor Lawrence on horns.
Bobby Keys, the guy from Rolling Stones?
Yes.
Oh my dear God. Good. Was there, were you... you didn't need the bread per se, but was it good bread, or were you just basically like, this is too much fun to pass up?
Well, it was both.
Yeah, I'm always curious about what a week or with Etta at the Troubadour would pay. I mean that, Stevie being on retainer, you're pretty, you're doing okay. I'm just wondering what those live gigs were, if they were, none of you guys, I mean, I shouldn't say that, but did anybody in the band, nobody was starving to death. Everybody was pretty much ensconced in the studio scene,
Yeah, that's true. And when I was with Etta, Trevor and them were in the studio. They'd be with Stevie, and Trevor would be with a whole bunch of people, and so there wasn't really a question about bread. It was just the excitement of playing with Etta James was just electrifying. And nobody, no matter what I was doing, or no matter what anybody was doing, if Etta called, it was like, okay, let's shut down. We're gonna back her up.
You're right.
And the power on the stage was just so strong that for one reason or another, we couldn't turn down the gig. We just had to, plan with Etta, and we played the Troubadour, and we went to San Francisco. We used to play up there.
Where would you play up there? Do you remember? Would you play the Keystone Corner was a rock club? Would you play Winterland? Where would? I'm trying to think about the places you could possibly play.
Yeah, the Winterland sounds familiar.
Yeah.
The Fillmore.
Yeah.
Yeah, and where else did we play? So
you were also if if she had little regional tours you'd go with? Did you go on the road with her across the country or overseas at all, or was it mainly regional?
At that time, it was mainly regional, but later on, it became we would go to Europe and we do the festival over there.
Wow.
We go to Germany and France and mainly England, Germany, the mainstream.
Absolutely. I mean, she was popular overseas as well.
Yeah.
You know, before we get into rare earth, there's a few guys I wanted to ask you about. Like, when was the first time you got hip to George Porter and the Meters? Those guys, I mean, that second line thing they were doing, the way they had that rhythm locked down. Were you hip to? Did you get hip to them right away, or when did you get hip to what they were doing?
First time I saw them play live was on Saturday Night Live when I was playing with Levon Helm and the
RCO All Stars.
The RCO All Stars.
Reggie Mcbride, stop right now, dude. This morning, my younger daughter and I are sitting at the table. We're playing Levon Helm and the RCO All Stars. Now I know you weren't on those albums, but how did that wind up happening? Because I mean, Duck Dunn was Duck and Cropper. That's insane.
Yeah. I think Mcbride got me in.
Oh, okay. So once. Wait, how did you first meet Dr. John?
Well, let's see. Well, for one thing, he didn't live far from me because he lived in Studio City, and I was in North Hollywood at the time.
Mm-hmm. This is like we're talking like late 70s here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Late 70s.
Yeah.
And I used to hang out with Mac.
That is so beautiful, man. I love that man so much, dude.
I did too. And we used to play together every so often. But I would go to his house and hang out. You know, we would visit each other. And we got to know each other. And we did a lot of studio stuff together because we were playing with Van Morrison. We did his record. And Van didn't like the band, or he didn't like the keyboard player he had. So Mac ended up coming in England.
A period of transition was the record.
Period of transition.
Yes.
That record.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it was a bunch of fun, man. And so we did end up doing a whole slew of dates together. Me and Mac and whoever else was involved. And then they said, "You want to do Saturday Night Live? It's going to be Levon Helm. It's going to be you. It's going to be Mac,
Fred Carter Jr.
Fred Carter Jr.
A legendary character, unbelievable.
Yeah, but Paul Butterfield.
Oh my God! So you flew? Were they taping in L.A. or did you go to New York?
We went to New York.
You went to New York, and was that the first time that you met Levon?
Yeah, that was the first time I met Levon.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is...
And that was fun.
Man, that is so beautiful. I mean, Jesus, that just... So going back... there's one more thing I wanted to ask you about before Rare Earth is this. I had this album for really a minute, and I couldn't get my ear around it, and Gave it to a great drummer friend of mine, and I'm glad I gave it away. But I'm jonesing for it back because it was Tonto. It's About Time. Malcolm Cecil.
Yeah.
How did you wind up on that particular? That album is incredibly progressive album.
Yeah. Well, Malcolm and Bob Margoloff, they built Tonto. And Tonto used to be camped out with us in the record plant in the back room.
Oh, my God.
My kids played with Tonto. I played with Tonto.
That is so classic. How did now? I'm just help me. Who is this Bobcat? I'm trying to figure out like how. I mean, Stevie, but Tonto also had the pull to get that much studio time in the record plant.
Yeah, I think Stevie would come in and do overdubs with it on at the time that I was with Stevie. I think they had just done Talking Book, which they did in New York. And they brought the whole machine in and put it in the back room of the record plant, Studio B. And they dedicated that booth for nothing but Tonto. And so Bob Margoloff and Malcolm Cecil were the engine behind Stevie. You know, they produced him and pretty much engineered, I believe, all his records from Talking Book to Fulfilling His Personality. And through his latest, they had done pretty much everything. And, they were the guys that built Tonto. But they would be there every day at the record plant.
So you're just blowing me away a little bit. I mean, I'm not going to pretend to be an aficionado of Stevie Wonder, but were they connected with him back in Detroit, or they only connected with him out in L.A.? And ultimately, I guess the real question is like, what does it mean to produce Stevie? I mean, were they able to offer meaningful suggestions that ultimately led to the success of the albums? Like you told me last time, for instance, like mainly it was all coming out of Stevie's head, but ultimately, what was it about those guys that helped make those records sound even better?
Well, when I got with them, like I said, they were a big influence in the production. So the engineering, and Bob Margoloff would give him the advice, and he took advice from everybody, including me too.
Right.
He said, "Well, Reggie, I want you to play on this song," which he already had the synth bass on, and things like that. And I said, "Man, you already got it."
Right. I don't need it. You don't need my bass. You got the synth bass.
You don't need my bass.
I did.
And we went into committee. They would talk to Stevie, and we would all talk about it. And Stevie said, "Yeah, I think you're right. That synth bass is good." I said, "Yeah." I said, "I hate to change it or try to top it, because I think you already got it, And so, just things like that, from what I could see. And
what was Tonto's rig about? You said they moved their whole rig into. What was that about? Because I mean, it's so. I mean, they had Tonto's expanding headband. I cannot. Because I'm just curious about what that was about.
Well, I'm not really sure. I know I got called to come in to the studio and do a record for Tonto, and I said okay. And they wanted me to overdub a bass track on a track that was already done. And, to look at Tonto, it looks like a giant flower. And you're sitting in the middle of it.
Oh, my God. That is great. That is such an amazing image right there.
Yeah, those oscillators were, 6 feet by 2.5, something like that. And that was one oscillator.
Oh, my God.
And they had 6 of them. So you sat inside of a flower, basically, a giant wooden flower with buttons. And it had the double-layered keyboard in the middle. And, it was just an awesome machine. I mean, awesome looking. You would want to go sit down in it.
Was it possible? Was it mainly only able to create individual parts or overdubs, or could you fit a whole band in there?
No, you couldn't fit a whole band. It was just the machine itself.
Right.
Say a bedroom-sized booth, which was a vocal booth, but it was customized for that machine.
This is something that popped out of my head. I have to ask you. There was a club in Detroit called the Sewer, and Mike Theodore. Did you ever work for Mike Theodore, by the way?
No, I don't believe so. I mean, not that I recollect.
Yeah, he and Dennis Coffey were at Golden World together, and then did a lot of work out in the West Coast. But they discovered this cat, Sixto Rodriguez. Later, that film came out, Searching for Sugar Man. Did you ever know Sugar Man?
I don't think so.
Did you see the documentary on him though? The idea where this cat made all these singles in Detroit, but was too shy and introverted. Then all of a sudden, his records take off in South Africa, and he becomes this incredible star 50 years later.
Oh yeah,
that was remarkable. I wasn't sure if you would ever, because that dude was. You were still kind of in Detroit at that time, but, did you? Can you talk about the first time that you really connected with or laid eyes on Narda Michael Walden?
Oh, I was with Tommy Bolin.
Right, and he was like in that Mahavishnu kind of bag,
Yeah, he was in Mahavishnu, and there was a time that he was with Tommy, and that's when I joined the band, Tommy Bolin Band.
Absolutely. I'm curious about like your philosophy. I mean, maybe, just the idea of someone like Narda, you're coming in, you're hearing a lot of language in some cases on the drums. It can be kind of frenetic. It's very powerful. And it's not jazz fusion, but with rock fusion. I just wonder, like, what's your philosophy about, making sure that your own individual voice is heard, but at the same time not overplaying and sort of keeping that root. I just wanted you to talk about that, like especially like in any situation when the drummer is really active and maybe it feels good and it sounds good, and you have to figure out how to fit yourself into that. How do you do that?
Well, exactly. You figure it out. You figure how to fit in with that sort of drummer. And mainly, it was the first time that I came across even played that kind of music. And with Tommy, it was totally free, like we talked about the other days. Like he would have the form, and what a great guitar player. I mean, he's soulful. And then just with us as a trio, we didn't record a lot. I think the only thing that we did was possibly live, but we did. He had just come out with the album Teaser first,
Right?
And so I didn't play on that record. I played on Private Eyes.
Yeah, I'm looking at Private Eyes here. It says Cherokee Studios in L.A., Trident Studios in London.
Yeah.
Oh, and Carmine Apiece. I was on drums. Bobby Hall, my dear friend. Wow. So, and you were singing as well.
Yeah.
So you would play in a trio with Narda, Tommy, and yourself?
Well, yeah. Narda, Tommy, Norma Bell on sax.
Norma Jean Bell.
Yes.
Wow. And wow.
Mark Stein
on keyboards.
Yeah.
Bobby Burge was another drummer.
Yes, Bobby Burge. Yeah.
I wonder, like, when you what was the I don't know if this is, what was one of the hardest times for you what was the most challenging time for you as a bass player in terms of, like, was it working with a drummer who didn't play a lot or did play? Like, what would you say was the most? I remember talking to a guy like Ron Tutt, the late great drummer, and he was like, and he was just like, when reggae hit the States, he got this armful of records in Dallas and was just so flummoxed and humbled by the fact that it was on the 1 and 3 instead of the 2 and 4, and he really had to shed on it because it was just so fundamentally different than your traditional American beat. Was there any kind of style of music or that was humbling for Reggie Mcbride?
Let's see.
I mean, honestly, you make everything sound so easy, but so the definition of genius is making something that looks difficult very easy. But even the masters, I'm just curious if like with reggae, was that? I mean, maybe it was fascinating. Did you have to shed on it? Was there any type of style of music that you really had to shed on because it was really kind of mind blowing to you?
Well, anything that had a lot of notes, I had to. I couldn't take it home. I just didn't have time to take it home and shed on it. I had to do it right there, right then and there. So, there were a few things that were not written, that I had to get my chops under. And that's with everything, pretty much. I had to get my chops under it and make sure that I'm playing the right notes and I got the right feel, especially if we were recording. Now, I remember doing a rehearsal with Frank Zappa.
Oh, boy.
And, they brought out the black page, I call it.
Absolutely.
And I said, I can't do that. I told Frank, I got to be honest with you. He said, how long do you think it'll take? I said, I have no idea.
That's unbelievable.
Black page. I could read a little bit, but I didn't have all the facility to look at that page and really, get my teeth into it. And it was complicated.
Oh my God! To this day, all those cats. I don't care if it was Tom Fowler, George Duke, or Ralph Humphrey. All those guys. I don't know how they did that. and did it so
Yeah,
well.
I don't know how either they could read a little bit, and like you say, they did a woodshed on it, and figured it out, which that makes sense because, everything, you got 30-second notes going in shape. It looks like a snake. And you're going like, well, I know it can be cracked. I know it can be done.
How long it's going to take, I don't know.
Yeah.
Incredible.
How long it would take, I don't know.
So that never really materialized. I mean, Frank was like,
no.
Yeah.
No, because I think, it was an audition, and he had several people sort of waiting out in the hallway. I said, well, I walked out. I said, next.
Well, there you go. That is it. Humbled by the wow, dude.
I mean, I wanted to really bad, but I said I gotta tighten up my eyes, a bit. Which I went and studied with Joe Valenti.
Now talk about that. I don't know who that is. Who is that?
Joe Valenti. He was a guy that if he was like the Evelyn Wood of speed reading.
Okay.
And everybody went to him if you couldn't see that shit, if you couldn't see that, he would see it. And he'd say, now slow it down. And I went to him for weeks on end. I mean, I went for a few months. I went to him, and I started finding out what it is that I'm looking at. I could read chord changes up until then and simple stuff, but when it came to that, he gave me the temperament in order to really slow down and see it.
And realize, like, it was sort of like one of those things where you don't rush it. Like, you can see it and then play it correctly, but sometimes your fingers want to go faster than your brain.
Right, because with me, it ain't about reading something like that.
Right.
It's about getting it under your chops.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So.
But it's cool in the sense that, like, it wasn't one of those things where you were like trying to get yourself up into a situation where you could go back to Frank and try out. It was just more like, this is kind of a weakness, and I have to address it for my career.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah.
Frank is definitely like sort of an outlier. Do you remember one of the next opportunities you had where it was maybe it wasn't the black page, but it was one of those, a lot of notes and kind of, shapes, and you were ready for it this time after your work with Valenti?
Yeah, I was ready for it. And at least I knew in my own heart that I could figure it out and know what it is.
Totally.
And with that much, that took me far. I would never run across, other than that page, I would never run across anything like that because nobody writes like that.
You're exactly. It's the most insane thing ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I said, well, you have to be a symphony player or something like that to really appreciate where that's coming from.
Did you play? When did you play with John Lee Hooker?
Oh,
Because I know he used to come through Detroit a lot, but that you didn't play with him back in Detroit, did you?
Oh, no.
Yeah.
No, I didn't play with him out of Detroit. It was later on when he had an album called John Lee Hooker and Friends.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they called me in to do that. So I think John, I forget John's last name, he was producing. I was working a lot with him. And so he called me for that record. And Jim Keltner on drums.
Can you please wait? Hold on. And was it overdubs or was John Lee in the studio with you guys?
Oh, John Lee was in the studio with us. We did it all at the same time.
This is legendary, dude. Please tell me about Jim Keltner's a dear friend. I mean, can you talk about what you love about Jim Keltner in terms of his playing? That dude is a legendary cat, and not even for any of his drumming. He's just a beautiful person.
Yeah. I love Jim. I love his playing. It was he sounded like two drummers when he played, and he did that on purpose.
What do you mean by that?
I don't know how. For instance, if he's playing, the hi-hat, he would be playing the cymbal bell at the same time and mixing it in with the hi-hat.
Right.
It's always something different with him. I mean,
you think that's because of his jazz background? Was that like a Philly Joe Jones kind of thing, or was that just unique to him? I mean, because a lot of people would say that, they call him sort of the Elvin Jones of rock, in the sense of he sort of is able to play polyrhythmically even in pop music. But what say you?
Yeah, I could see that. Yeah. And I think it was just him.
You're darn right it was.
He filled in the space where it needed. And it was like, well, when he got finished doing a track, we don't need any percussion because it's already there. Hey, what a great drummer.
I mean, you're a great bass player, but it's a little bit like, I love when I hear one drummer and it sounds like three drummers, or like, it just sounds like there's so much going on, and it's that four-way coordination, where you get four things going on in each different appendage,
Oh, yeah. And I've seen him do that with an octopad. When octopad came,
sure.
Out, everybody was going like, octopad. I mean, you can play this pad, and you got sounds coming out. And we were doing a film. We did this film with Sam Moore and Junior Walker.
Wow.
And it was called Paypads. If you ever get a chance to see it.
What was it called?
Paypads.
How do you spell it?
Tapehead.
Oh, Tapeheads. Dude, I got to check that out.
Check it out.
Yeah, I got to get that. Yeah.
It's incredible the way that it's done, because we were backing up and playing live. It was kind of a silly movie, but we were playing. The whole story is about playing behind Junior Walker and Sam Moore, and they were a team like Sam and Dave.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it was like that. Yeah, and we did that top to bottom, and Keltner was playing drum. And the tracks just came out insane. I thought the whole film was insane.
Wait, hold on. Because in the past they would, if it was Joe Porcaro, Shelly Manne, Emil Richards, like they would, if they were doing like a Lalo Schifrin film, they project the film out on a big wall to give the guys like an idea of the kind of tempo or the kind of vibe, and then they'd play to the scenes. And this is going back, but how did it turn out? How did you? Because you guys were basically trying to at least comp what Junior Walker and Sam were doing.
Well, they were like a group, so that's what made it easy. They would do a song at a time, and we would go in the control room and watch the footage, that they had.
Absolutely.
No, I'm sorry. We did it live with Perkins at Perkins Palace.
Perkins Palace.
Yeah, in Pasadena. We had a theater. It's a theater in Pasadena called Perkins Palace. And they recorded the whole thing live.
So this is fascinating. I just want to be clear, like, you guys weren't in the film itself playing them. You were just recording inside. You recorded the music inside Perkins Palace.
Well, some of it. And then most of it was live at Perkins Palace.
Wow. So you guys are actually in the film.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. This is insane. Tape heads.
Yeah.
Yeah, film from 1988.
Yeah. That sounds about right.
Wow. Is there anything musically that is on your bucket list, is on the Reggie Mcbride bucket list? I mean, you're one of the coolest cats around. You've done... I mean, I don't know. Have you played a Stone jazz gig ever? I know you're not an upright player, but is there anything you haven't done that you want to do musically?
Well, I mean, I appreciate a lot of different music, and I appreciate. I'm like a fan.
Sure.
I listen to. I sort of like it all.
I love all. You love all of it.
I love all of it. Yeah, and I've never been a legitimate upright player. I only played when there was a need for upright on a certain track. And I never thought of myself as a legitimate upright player.
Totally, but you're telling me that there were times where you would pick up the bass fiddle and play it if needed?
Yes.
Because I mean, like that, you're saying you weren't a legitimate player, but you could just pick it up and play it. How could you do that? I mean, that's most of the cats that I talked to. I mean, George Porter, he didn't have the armature to play the upright. It's using a totally different muscle set. How did you do it so effortless? Or maybe, I mean, how did that work? Or do you think you're maybe a savant when it comes to music?
Well, it could be. You know what? It was basically, I'm on the spot.
Sure.
I'm going like, well, they want upright here. And so I had to figure out, intonation mostly right there on the spot. So I had my upright, and I would work on it at home, when I had time to sort of practice. But other than that, it was pretty much on the spot. I had to pick up the, I call it the doghouse.
Yeah, you're right.
I got to pick up the upright bass, and I got to play certain passages. I have to play that. So I got to make sure I get those notes out on my fingers and somehow make it sound like, a real upright player. So I got that in my head, what a real upright player would play, and sort of embellished on that.
Who were some of the upright cats that you? I mean, did you know Ray Brown? Did you?
Yeah.
Like, who were the upright guys that you? Even growing up, Paul Chambers or any of those cats. Like, I mean, those.
Paul Chambers, yeah.
Jamerson was an upright player. He was a jazzer. The other question would be like, do you remember the first? Because you said it was on the spot. It was in the studio. It was needed.
Yeah.
Do you remember the first time someone's like, "Hey, Reggie, we need you to play the bass fiddle. Can you do this?" And you pulled it off.
Yeah. We were in England with Van Morrison, and either Van spoke up about it or either Mac spoke up about it. Said, "Can you play upright?" We were in the country, out in the country in England. I forget the name of the studio, but it was like, okay, let's make a call and get an upright in here.
And you're like, oh boy, you're like, I don't even know. That's insane.
Yeah, it's insane, totally. But I knew, at least what it felt like to play the upright and what it should sound like. So I ended up playing on a cut that we did, playing upright on a couple of tunes.
That is so amazing. I mean, because there's the whole tuning system for that too. That just, to me, like, well, first of all, Reggie the amount of variations. I just want to make sure that this is accurate.
Yeah.
Variations: Reggie Mcbride, R. Mcbride, Reggie Ratmaster McBride, Reggie Shack McBride, Reggie the Colonel McBride, Reggie Mcbride, Reggie McBride, Reggie McBride, Reginald McBride. I mean, dude. I love the nicknames. I mean, it was. Are those all names that you've been called?
Yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
So just going back to the other question. I mean, is part of you thinking that maybe you would, even though it might be, you would want to do a little more work with the upright? Is that a challenge? Is that something you think about? I just wonder, like, with you guys at this point, your generation, I mean, what is still inspiring for you? Like, what still really gets you excited about the process of making music and playing music? Not that you're not a fan, but I'm talking about the actual application of playing. Like, what is still inspiring for you?
Well, the sound, how it's going to turn out in the track, and challenging myself and making sure that everything sounds good and in tune, and it's grooving. It's on point.
Absolutely. You find you try to work with a lot of younger cats? Or are you still pretty active? I mean, I know the whole recording process, the idea that you guys were just like dwelling in the record plant for years is like so insane and cool. But that doesn't happen anymore. It's not even close to that anymore. There's just like a lot of cutting and pasting. Do you try to pick and choose the sessions you work on, and how important is it for you to still cut tracks with human beings together at the same time?
Well, I'd love to do it if it were more.
Yeah, right. It's not very prevalent, right?
No, it's not. It's not really, how you say, prevalent now. It's not. I don't. It's hard to do when you don't have the permission. kind of, it's like, well, I know that the younger people want to do this, and maybe they want to be in the same room. I don't know. But I get some calls from some young people that know about that. I pull this upright out, and they jump. They're like, "What's that? You're not going to kill us, are you?"
The doghouse, dude.
It's highly complicated now because it's just not the same. And I think that beside it may be people that have such good samples. They got samples of me. And,
yeah, absolutely. I know you're 100% right, but it's like, what do you have to say for yourself? Why are you copying somebody else?
Yeah.
That to me is the biggest downer, man. Like, I get it. I understand it. These are fat beats, great break beats. You're sampled, Indugu's sampled, everybody's sampled. Chuck Rainey. But that was you guys wouldn't want to sample. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think that wasn't what you guys were about. You wanted to put your own individual stamp on it. That's what concerns me the most about music is a direct reflection of society and culture. And if you are leaning towards conforming and trying to sound like or sample something that has already been done, then there's nothing new there. Maybe there's some catchy hip rap lyrics or something, but instrumentally, musically, the music won't grow if you're going to conform. I wonder what you because weren't you always about clearly you wanted to get the call back. You weren't just going to play what you wanted to, and you made a name for yourself. But was your motivation to have that Reggie Mcbride sound, or always get that? Because you were definitely one of the groove makers, but yet you weren't out there like, oh, I'm just going to. I just want to copy this guy's playing. Or obviously there weren't samples either, but was individuality a big part of your success?
Oh, yeah, because that's what I got called for. If a person liked the way you played, they're calling you for you. And I get on some sessions, and I said, "You want me to play it like?" He said, "No.
Absolutely, man.
Yeah, that question would always fall in my mind. Do they want me to play it like so and so or like? No, we want you.
We want you. Right? That's why we hired you, man. That was and nowadays they don't even. Unfortunately, like Don Randy. I don't know if you ever worked with him. He. Before this guy was part of the Wrecking Crew, every day, 3-4 sessions a day. And now he comes in, plugs in his keyboards, plays the overdub, and leaves. It's like everything's automated. Everything's done in isolation. It's so humbling, It's a really... and just also the way music is sort of dispersed within the ability for people to consume it. So many people can just stream it for free. And that was not always the case. There was a real record industry built up within the music.
Exactly.
When you were coming up. So the whole situation, people could say it's been turned upside on its head, but I also think that the significance of music and the way people perceive music has changed so much where now it's like, oh, music is a musician's gift to the world. You can pay to play or you can play for the door, but it's not really a profession, which really breaks my heart because, back when thank God, you feel lucky that is there a way, I'm not trying to turn the clock back, but some people would say we need a complete dissolution of society, which is scary, in order for authentic music to come back. What are those? Yeah. What are some encouraging signs? Is there a light at the end of the tunnel? Not for you, you're already set, but for the younger cats, is there anything that gives you hope for the future in terms of people being able to make a living playing original spiritual music. Everybody was, I mean, a lot of cats were able to do that in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. It wasn't easy. A lot of people did get ripped off. A lot of people were left high and dry, but all the cats you worked with weren't copying anybody else. They were all being themselves, and they all made a pretty good living doing it.
Yeah, that's true. It's like now things have changed so much that there's individual groups of people, I feel.
Right.
That one group of people might like this, one group of people like this, and one group of people might know this and know what we went through, know and appreciate what we went through.
Right.
But most people, and I don't know if it's because of what's going on today, accept whatever's going down. And it could be machines, it could be popcorn music or whatever. They're desperate. And I feel that's the way I feel inside. They are, when people hear live music, they're just young people especially, they're blown away.
Absolutely.
They see us playing and they don't believe it. They stick around and they say, wow, this is incredible. But in the market area, that doesn't exist because it's not, well, for one thing, it's not live. And we're hearing it as canned music, a lot of times. And
there's no artist development,
Yeah.
I'm wondering about Stevie's trajectory because you joined him when he had already had some big hits, but James Taylor, Joni Mitchell, Bruce Springsteen, their first couple albums did not make it to the radio. But the company stayed with them, developed them, and they had great people, great musical connoisseurs around them, not bean counters, but real music heads, got them. And what you talk about now is this panic or this rush, and it's like with the technology today, that's like the default. So if you're not going to seek out what came before you, you're going to settle for inanimate, sterile, machine music. And then you actually see cats playing live and going over the edge. And it's, I'm 45, but live music to me is one of the most, if not the only thing that is really healing for me. And I'm not talking about going to the symphony orchestra. I'm just talking about cats that are getting up there and going for it, And that's like the most healing thing in the world. Only because I've decided to seek out and do 2,000 interviews with all you cats, and I've chosen to seek out cats that made the real pulse and the real heartbeat and the real music. And I don't think cats today feel, because there's so much instantaneous information out there, they'll settle for what's out there without really seeking,
Yeah, and it's hard to hunt for it anyway.
That's right. It's true, because there's so much, and so much of it is so mediocre. You have to really know.
Yeah. You know it when you hear it, but it's very hidden. There's nothing moving air out there.
And COVID definitely, I can just tell from my peers, in terms of the only way you can really make money in music now is by road dogging it, because there's no studio scene. There's very few intellectual property rights. And, you get 14,000 downloads on Spotify. You get about $6. But you go on the road and you can sell money, or you can sell merchandise and make dough. But even now, a lot of bars are still broke. So it's really hard to even compensate the musicians right now.
Yeah, that's very difficult. And we needed the bars all along. I mean, when we played bars, and they were back in business. And that's all my life. I mean, I would play a bar for a while, and then people would come in and drink. And it'd be a 4-piece rhythm section. It depends on how good you were. You had to really bring your worth. And I've seen, I come back the next week and there's more people. I come back the following week, there's more people. And the bar takes off. The bar is making money.
Well, and that's the other part of it is that the residency, it wasn't a one and done situation. I mean, you were there for a week at a time, or you'd be there every other week. So word would get out locally, and cats could come see you. And now it's like you're there for one night, and then even a jazz tour. Art Blakey used to come in for 2 weeks at a time, or a month at a time. Now you go overseas and you're playing 24 gigs and 26 nights in 24 different countries.
Wow. It's incredible.
And there's no ability for that regional excitement to build, is what I'm trying to say. Like, and so like the speed of society, the technology, a whole lot of things. But I will say the one thing that gives me a lot of hope is that I went up to a festival in Idaho a few weeks ago and met a bunch of really scrappy bands that, definitely not at the pro level yet, from Utah, Oregon, Washington, Montana. And I mean, they're not up there like wanking it. They're really trying to get something across, and the players have their own vibe and personality, and it's just a very restrictive time. I mean, I feel like no matter what, society is not, they're much more interested in pacifying people through music than they are to have people burn and really be introspective and think. And it's been dumbed down a lot. And so that's the challenge for so many younger cats who are so hungry and are really quite talented, is how do you find an audience that's really plugged in? How do you find an audience that's really there because they want to hear what you have to say? What are you saying,
Yeah. And it used to happen automatically.
Exactly.
We would play, like I say, and the same thing happens on the road. I think you go to one town, and if you are good, word gets out, you get to go to the next town. And so on. You keep going until you build up this audience and that's your magic word, this audience, what the people want. And then, you go from there. You have a job. And you keep doing the same thing and making good music and satisfying people. And to me, when they walk away with a smile on their face, we've done our job.
You absolutely.
And, with the industry, we can't. That's very tough to control. Because people can throw millions behind it, and but if they're not getting the revenue, if they don't have it, then they're not going to throw the money at it.
Well, and then the other part of it is just like Stevie had to clear a certain bar to get a record out. Aretha Franklin, there was a certain threshold you had to cross to get a record out, and now they're propping people up who can't even play live, but based on the way they look or their following, they're building these people up, and they're becoming stars, and they can't even play or sing.
Yeah. And meanwhile, if we try to walk on the stage, they pull us back.
The accompanists. That's why I started my show. Yeah, I mean, you've been relegated to backbenchers. Don't even show up on the stage. But there's a whole lot of issues here, Reggie, and we need to keep exploring this. I actually have to go. I have to go get my daughter right now. But are you going to be around later? I just wanted to talk to you about a couple of things off air.
Oh, sure. I mean, if it could be another day, that would be good.
All right. I'll call you later this week or sometime, and we'll just got a couple things I wanted to ask you. But dude, man, it's really such a humbling experience to be able to connect with you, man. You're very humble and a lot of grace, and like you're these interviews that I'm doing will live on long after we've left this planet to inspire other people to, hopefully, to do the things that we're talking about. So much love to you, man, and I'll talk to you soon.
You too.
All right, man.
All right, take care, Jake.
All right, be cool, Reggie.
All right, be
Bye.
cool.